So we've been receiving a lot of questions lately following local protests, national protests regarding police reform, use of force, that general topic. And these questions today are specifically from the media. They have some more, they're asking for some more information about some of our policies, procedures, and your standpoint on things. So,
Sure.
Is there anything that you would like to say before we get into these questions?
I think it's important for the community to realize that we're constantly looking at our process and evaluating and holding ourselves accountable to our policies and procedures and our personnel. And so that's important. It's an important part of review, but it's also important to listen. I think one thing that we've demonstrated throughout the time that I've been here and the previous sheriff and our law enforcement community is that we're willing to have a conversation. If it's a tough conversation about whatever it may be, about police brutality, racism, homelessness, mental illness, de-escalation, all these things are important to us as is important to our community. And so we are open to that dialogue. We're open to working with community organizers, community groups to help solve this problem as a community. Because we recognize it can't just be my job. It can't just be, someone else's community organizers or social workers' job. It's all of our job to protect this community and to do our best to make sure that that it's done with integrity that everyone requires of someone who's wearing a badge. So it's very, very important.
Okay, so a reporter wants to know, talk of police reform has been dominating the headlines. Do you believe there should be national standards for police departments?
So they can have some kind of national standard, and I think that's, that can be the prerogative. But what I don't want is I don't want a nationalized police force. I don't want a statewide police force. I think what the community needs is a community police force. And as soon as we get away from that, then it becomes more of a military organization. And that's, I think, how we do law enforcement here on the North Coast is unique. We do have guidelines, we do have policies, procedures, we have state law, but we also have individuals that are in charge of the law enforcement agencies here. Whether you're a chief of police or the elected sheriff, said we are responsible to be that law enforcement and the law enforcement heads to control how our departments interact and behave and also integrate with the community to solve community problems. So I think as soon as you pull away from that and go national or statewide, then it becomes an issue of how is this personal to our community. I think it's important that our community understands that our deputy sheriffs are here to serve. We are here to protect. These people could go other places to be in law enforcement. They choose here because they love this county. They can make more money elsewhere, but they choose this county. They want to raise their family here because they want things to be better.
And do you want to talk about a little bit California Post?
Yes.
And I don't know if many people know about that.
Right. So California is unique. I think we lead the way across the United States regarding our California police officer standards and training. Okay, so it is a state mandate that we have certain levels of training here. They mandate how much hours in the police academy and what the curriculum is in the police academy, the learning domains. And so they go through a series. Our law enforcement officers get all this education before they even become a peace officer. And they have to demonstrate that in the academy, go through scenarios, go through practical exercises, go through lots of book work about how to be a law enforcement officer. And then the challenges of that. I mean, not only are we enforcing the law, but we are responding to people with mental health issues. We're dealing with child abuse. We're dealing with domestic violence and mass casualty incidents and active shooters. All these things that we have to be so proficient at every single time, and then not make a mistake. We have, we can never make a mistake on those things. That's our standard, and that's what we have to present to our community. So our standards and training are some of the highest in the nation, and so we take that serious. And also, there's 24 hours every 2 years of continued professional training that each law enforcement officer has to have. That's the minimum standard, and we put all our officers through that, and then some. Prioritizing crisis intervention training and focus our training on de-escalation. Those are the things that we already do with our firearms training, defensive tactics training, and cultural diversity training. All these things are geared towards de-escalating situations that could turn volatile. So training is very much a focus here, focus of our department and the state, and I don't think we need to lose sight of that.
And there's been a lot of references to the carotid hold or choke
Right.
Has the sheriff's office employed what the reporter says carotid choke, but it's carotid hold, reference in the release? If so, is the sheriff's office changing its policy?
So carotid restraint is a part of our use of force policy, but we haven't trained in it in essentially years. And so what we want to do is we're evaluating that right now as far as why is it even in the policy if we're not training with it. And so it gives us that time to look at it. I know the governor's already said that he wants it out. Police officer standard and training says they're not going to train anymore with it. And so as we see, I've had this discussion with our defensive tactics instructors, and right now we don't see the validity in keeping it because we're not training with it. We don't see the practical application in it right now, and so that's going to be a part of the policy being modified to reflect what true training standards are. And the fact is that post is not going to be trained anymore. It speaks volumes to me. That does not need to be in our policy. So that's one of the things that we are looking at immediately changing.
And it may be important to mention that our policy says you can only use it if you have training on it.
That's right. Our policy does clearly state that. If you've been trained on it, you can use it, but we have not trained on it, so people aren't using it. So, yeah.
What is your reaction to the defund the police rallying cry?
So I think that's short-sighted. Defund the police. I think right now we need a police force that is not defunded, but we need a police force that is focused on what we need it to be. And so I think saying something like defunding the police is not something that can even be a part of the conversation, right? There's things that we can change as in law enforcement. There's things that can be done differently as far as overall and how we respond to calls. And if social workers want to respond to those people that having crises, that mental health crisis and those kind of things without a badge and a gun going to someone who is having a mental health crisis, we can steer our community or our government to go that route. And I'm willing to have those conversations because I think that's a good idea, having social workers respond to those type of calls instead of law enforcement officers. I think it's a great idea. I think you're going to see law enforcement in general says, please, mental health, go to these type of calls. When it's not a danger, when someone says they're just suicidal, why is it that we have to go? There could be another mechanism for social workers to go. So those are the kind of conversations we want to have about that. Defunding the police, not a good idea. This is something that we need to actually, keep the existing funding. We need to actually look at this as a profession. Okay? The amount of responsibility each law enforcement officer has is great. And I think there's no bigger demonstration by having 4 people do it wrong and do criminal activity and see the widespread issues that it caused. And so I think that having law enforcement officers that are properly educated, that are properly paid, that are professional, and that and there's a strict standard that they have to uphold, I think is what this community needs, and I think that's what the nation needs. Because this is a vital job, and we see the amount of public trust that's been eroded by these individuals back east. And so I don't think defunding the police is a valid argument. How can we improve the police department is the conversation that we should have.
And I think it might be a good time to talk about even Measure Z and pre-Measure Z to now. We're in obviously a much better situation because we have more deputies that we're able to employ. Can you talk about how?
Yes. So if like prior to Measure Z being funded, I mean, we had 6 deputies that were responding to the whole county. And so we became reactionary. We became, we weren't proactive. We were out of the main station and we deployed out of here. So if there was a problem in Willow Creek, we sent people out of the main area of the Willow Creek or to Garberville, So, that is not a way to do police force. Proactive policing, being out front, integrating with your community, solving community problems, being there, boots on the ground, hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder with the community, and being able to meet with someone is important. When you get your house broken into and you want to find someone that did this and hold someone accountable, that's not going to happen by defunding the police. By sending an insurance report out and says, sorry, we can't send a deputy out there to investigate this because we don't have a deputy to send. People are not going to like that aspect, and that's a part of our job to make sure that we investigate those things.
And prior to Measure Z, that's what we heard from the community when we had community meetings. People wanted more help in their community and dedicated people. Specifically, I remember in Garberville, there was a very, very big crowd that came out for that one specific meeting.
That's right. They want more law enforcement out there and proactive law enforcement in there. I mean, having 24-hour coverage in case you're in the middle of the night and you need a deputy sheriff, and that deputy sheriff's coming from Main Station Eureka and you need him in Garberville, that's not going to do you any good. And so defunding the police is just not, not a really valid argument. It's not going to solve any problems here.
Are there, and you talked about this a little bit more, are there certain aspects of policing that could be accomplished more successfully with specialization, mental health interventionists, consultants for the homeless, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So the more education we have in those kind of things, the better. De-escalating situations and those kind of things. There are specialists that can do the job better, and homeless liaisons and working with social workers and trying to go out in the community and solve some of these community type problems, again, that doesn't take a badge and a gun to enforce. I think it's important, and it's an important part of the community realize that, and that we can work together with our social workers to try and figure things out. I think, we've seen it demonstrated by the Eureka Police Department, their CSET program, a very good program, solid partnership they have with social workers, with law enforcement, POP teams here at the Eureka Police Department, some of the other departments, working together with the homeless liaisons from DHHS, going throughout the county. I think that's the partnerships that we need to continue to make. And then also community government and community groups, so to speak. I've been talking with True North Community Organizing about homeless camps in McKinleyville, and talk to them that government's not necessarily going to take care of this problem. We can assist. We need to partner with people, individuals, nonprofits, to help organize and to supervise, places, programs for homeless individuals. And I think that's the unique part about being in law enforcement or being a part of government here in rural Northern California, is that we can partner. People want to partner with us, and we can help with these community issues.
Absolutely. So reach out if you are a community organization that can provide the support. Right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
And are there some duties deputies navigate that are not, in all intents and purposes, law enforcement?
Well, yeah, you could say that, absolutely, because we have, we go to, let's say incorrigible juveniles. Okay, we have juveniles that refuse to go to school, and guess who gets the phone call? It's law enforcement. Law enforcement goes to someone's house and says, Johnny, who's 10 years old, your mom says you're refusing to go to school. You need to go to school. And we have that conversation with them there. And so is that a real vital issue that we need to have law enforcement respond to at that point in time? We'll do it. We have done it. But is that really our job to go out there? That first interaction from, a child's sake, and you're going to have, who's having a bad day, refusing to go to school, and the mom decides to call us to make their kid go to school. We respond and we have a conversation, and we'll do our best to get on a knee and talk eye to eye with the child and talk about the importance of school and do everything we need to do to try and encourage that kid to go to school. But is that really our job? We do it. Mental health is the same way. That someone is in crisis and they need to go to SV, they're going to call us and they're going to say, I'm thinking about hurting myself and I need to go somewhere. And so we're there to take care of the situation. Same one with someone's having a psychotic issue at home. We're going to go and help that person and try to help them steer to, their help. So there's these kind of situations that we constantly evaluate to try and figure out, is this job above and beyond? Part of it is being in a small town. We want to help, and so we want to be there to help. But maybe there's some other better way that we can do that.
Would it be operationally better to let deputies focus on public safety and law breaking versus being on the front lines, as you said, of mental health crisis, homelessness, that sort of thing? Yeah,
there's always things for us to do, but when those do intersect, when there's a crime that does occur, we will be involved in that. Whether it's a fight, a homeless camp, drunk in public, drugs, guns, those kind of things that are in the community, we're going to intersect with some of those issues. But overall, it shouldn't be our responsibility. But oftentimes it does. It falls on us to go clean up a homeless camp, to go address someone that's camping, or someone who's having the crisis, who's shouting loud noises in downtown, McKinleyville along the sidewalk and intimidating people, and invites us to have a conversation with people. But we recognize we have to treat every situation uniquely, and so dealing with people in crisis, that's what we need to focus on our training and help people, and then also have the capacity of steering them somewhere. Part of the bigger conversation is mental health in the county. Mental health overall, okay, needs to be addressed. And you know, it's not done right now. Statewide, our poor mental health department doesn't have enough money. We don't have the facility. We don't have the staff to support the amount of mental health problems that we have in our county. So it's both. Support public safety, support mental health. Let's get down to the root of what government's supposed to be about, and let's support these entities that the community is concerned about.
And then finally, a reporter says, in response to protests against police, some people across the country are going out to rally in support of law enforcement, but some opponents argue that police lives and Black lives can't both matter at the same time. What is your take on the Blue Lives Matter movement, and could it be considered insensitive or offensive?
It all depends on your perspective. Because you say Black Lives Matter does not mean you have to be anti-cop. And I think there are platforms where that is being said. And so I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that everyone that says Black Lives Matter means that they're anti-cop. Absolutely not. I've talked with people about that. And I think, right now being sensitive to the Black Lives Matter movement and what they're standing for, and calling attention to the issues, back in Minneapolis, it's important to have that discussion, that dialogue now. I appreciate support for law enforcement. I want people here to stand up for law enforcement and be, and to voice their support for law enforcement, what we do here in California, and not diminish, the Black Lives Matter movement. You don't have to be one or another, okay? Our local law enforcement needs the support, like I said before. So we've built, years and years of community trust. I don't want to see that eroded based upon, what happened in Minneapolis. I want our community to be encouraged about the dialogue that we are doing with our communities, and never resting, never becoming apathetic with how we build relationships. We're always focused on that, and always putting our community first. So again, we want to build people up in this time, and I think law enforcement in general needs to feel supported by our community, because we are doing things right, and we are taking the time to make sure that that does happen. So I don't want community trust to erode here. I want people to have faith in their law enforcement, and also feel comfortable in supporting law enforcement, because it's important that our community realize that these men and women put on a badge, uniform every day, when they know that they may not come home because of the uniform and badge that they wear. Someone just might take them out because of what they wear and what they stand for, law and justice. So I think it's important that this community rallies around law enforcement, but also sensitive to the fact that there is a bigger movement out there right now where there's nationwide reform, or discussion of nationwide reform, and but it can be done in a manner that I think everyone wins, and everyone recognizes the issues with this movement.
Is there anything else you'd like to include today?
Nope, I'm just thankful that we still have men and women that are dedicated to this job, and that are showing up to work every day and going out there for the calls for service, and they're the true heroes and here, and they're willing to do this, and willing to support the people that are protesting, and willing to have an avenue of expressing their First Amendment rights, and so I applaud that, and that's the kind of community we live in, and so I'm thankful for that.